Right, now we've just heard from James Roguski about the criminal cabal and their capture of the UN and the WHO. Now we're going to talk with Mads Palsvig. He's the chairman of the Prosperity Party in Denmark. And also he's a former Morgan Stanley executive who turned whistleblower. And I was looking at Mads' X account in the last few days, and I saw that he's got a 5-step plan on what we need to do to stop this ever happening again and to undo the capture that they've managed to get, this criminal cabal. So, Mads, welcome to the Freeman Report.
Thank you so much, James, for having me back. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Mads. So, I read through all of this. I think there absolutely is a fantastic, and like always, the best plans are simple plans, not reams and reams and documents and documents. You've got a 5-step plan on how to stop them controlling the world the way they are. Run us through them. I think the first one, Mads, isn't it, is money creation. What have you got to say on that?
Yeah, so there are 5 steps, and if you do those 5 steps worldwide, there will be no poverty. We're talking within months, literally. There will be plenty for everybody. The world is truly abundant. It's only because the people in power are destroying it, they're polluting it deliberately. Just think about, on the one hand, they are green, on the other hand, they are bombing all over the world. It makes no sense at all. So number one, money creation. Right now, it's used for wars. Period. And then they make the odd exception for a lockdown or to vaccinate the entire world population. But that's an exception. It's basically used for wars. It goes money laundering from the money creation straight into the pockets of the military-industrial complex. And it's also very beneficial to get rid of rulers and democracies who are not part of the cabal. And when you destroy a country, you kill all the rich people, and you make new people rich and wealthy who are beholden to the cabal. So we need to make sure that the money creation belongs to the people. It should go I prefer that it is paid out as dividend to each citizen in the world, just like Gaddafi proposed with his oil revenues in Libya, to share it equally per capita. I think that is the best way, because the money with people, they will spend it buying from each other. Multiplicator effect will create an abundance and an economic growth we cannot fathom. You have to think about Japan from 45 to 1990. They created the money this way. They were totally leveled by America. And in 45 years, they were the richest country in the world. Take China, they increased the money creation with monetary base with 10% a year. And they came from the poorest country in the world about 45 years ago to being one of the wealthiest. So it is so simple. It brings tears to your eyes.
And it is quite perverse, isn't it? This money laundering thing, because essentially governments create money through bonds. They sell bonds on the bond market. They get that money, like the US and also the tax bases in the West. They give that to Ukraine. Ukraine usually siphons off a bit. The politicians, some of it always goes missing. Then essentially it comes back to the US and other countries via their weapons manufacturers. And ironically, the people that own those military contractors are the people that buy the bonds. So there's a whole merry-go-round with this, isn't there? And it is a spiral of control. And essentially it is stealing our wealth through inflation, and money creation without, but yeah, it's debasing the currency, isn't it?
Yes, and in Ukraine's case, they will donate some of it, and then they will lend them money so they can buy weapons, and then of course on a huge interest, so they cannot pay that because all the men are at war, they're being killed. So that nobody's working. Of course, they can't pay the debt, and they're not supposed to, because what they really want is the breadbasket of the world. Ukraine could literally feed the entire world. That's how fertile the soil is. And that is also an example of how incredibly abundant the world is. So they want to take all that land, because as one of the most evil men ever existed, Henry Kissinger, said, if you control food, you control the people. And so they're not interested in abundance. They're not interested in making sure that everybody has enough food on their plate. Because once you have enough food on your plate, you start thinking about love, about caring for each other, about culture, about music, about arts, about sport, about looking after your body, about philosophy. And the evil cabal, they don't want any
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, exactly. It is very, and of course, if you listen to RFK, which will show you how RFK Jr., he says that 30% of that land now, because it was handed to BlackRock to manage by the Biden administration last December, 30% of that land has already been sold to corporations like DuPont, like Monsanto and others. So it really is just it's a money laundering operation. I think is the only other way you can put it. Now, the second one on your list, Mads, was replace income tax and corporate tax. Tell us what that's about.
So right now, the income tax is taking away the multiplicator effect from people. So let's say that if I pay you £100 for offering me a service, and the taxman takes 50, you only have 50 to pay to someone else. And then he only have 25. So within a couple of transactions, the money has been taken by bureaucrats who are not very efficient. Just think about the lockdown. Did anyone notice the entire public sector went home? Nobody noticed
No,
because
no.
they don't do anything really, except making life miserable for everybody else. And I'm sorry if I hurt some nurses' feelings. I was not thinking about you, and not also if you are working driving a train. I was not mentioning you, and of course if you are. But I'm talking about the bureaucrats who are making lives miserable with more regulations and more laws we don't need. So that's the income tax. The corporation tax is basically to make sure that local businesses do not compete with the multinational corporations, because multinational corporations have never paid any tax in history. They don't pay tax. They have all their income in tax shelters and all their expenses in the UK and Denmark and Australia, in the countries they loot. So by removing corporate tax, you are actually helping local businesses. And the beauty with local businesses is that mom and a pop shop, they don't care so much about profits. They care about sharing their products with their customers. They love to see happy customers, and if they can make a living, they're happy. But they don't need to squeeze out the last drop of your blood. But the big multinational corporations, they have no relationship with any client. It's all about profits, and they have a board who just tells them to squeeze more money out, squeeze more money out. So what we want to do is remove corporate tax, because then we can have a fair competition with the multinational corporations. So we will replace income tax and corporate tax with a 1% tax on all transfers of money. So it's mobile pay, it's a credit card payment, but it's also every single bank transfer, digital bank transfer you do. That way, the multinational corporations will be paying tax for the first time in history. When they import for 1 billion, they pay 10 million. When they pay salaries for 1 billion, they pay 10 million. Whenever they do anything, they just pay and it's a win-win situation for everybody. Even for the multinational corporations. Why? Because their client base just increased because everybody is middle class. So they will have a lot more clients. It's a win-win for everybody, including the multinational corporations.
Yeah, exactly. Because people say that, well, corporations, they're just more efficient than local services and all of that. But the truth is, well, no, a lot of the tech companies in Uber and whatever, the reason they're successful is because they find ways of changing the regulation already in the country. So on the Uber case, we've got the London taxi drivers who have to do courses to become a driver, driving courses, and also their knowledge of London. They go through lots of checks, whereas Uber's business model is much cheaper than that, because they just get, any Tom, Dick or Harry who's got a car, and you can drive for Uber. So it's not really about making the world more efficient and a better place, actually, with these corporations. And of course, Amazon is putting all small businesses, it doesn't matter what you do, they're putting them out of business because they're literally trying to be the everything of everything. The third one on the list, Mads, is create mortgage institutions that lend out interest-free mortgages to people, but not corporations. Explain that one for us.
Yeah, so if, for example, in Denmark, we've had mortgage institutions since the late 1700s. They never went bust because they were owned by the members. Not a single time did they go bust. And the fees we had to pay was 0.1%. 0.1% was enough to pay all the costs ever, including defaults. Then they were turned into corporations by the Danish government, and now we pay 1.5%. So now we pay 15 times more to the corporation because they just want to suck out our lifeblood. But what I'm saying here is, if we have interest-free mortgages, and we just had negative interest in Denmark, so don't say the interest couldn't go to zero, right? We should have, if we have interest-free mortgage, that means that when you have a mortgage and you pay your mortgage every month, you're paying to yourself. You're not paying to the bank. And that means that more people would want to have their own house and their own home. And it's one way of being more free, but it's also, you probably also look more after your property if you own it than if you rent it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is a core part of freedom, actually, because if people don't own the land, then, or if they don't own anything, if you don't have assets, then you can be pushed around by government, you can be pushed by the corporates, but which is why essentially at the moment there is a push to you will own nothing and you will be happy, because that's the whole purpose, is because they know that if you don't own assets, land in particular, then you've got no rights. You literally are not free. The fourth one is remove real estate tax on every human being's. Oh, no. We've just covered that one, haven't we? Or have we? No, we haven't. Remove real estate tax on every human being's primary residence.
Yeah, because right now it's bizarre that we allow BlackRock to buy up all the best property in Copenhagen and the other two largest cities in Denmark. Why would we do that? Why? I mean, it's insane. So I'm thinking, if we didn't pay real estate tax on our primary home, and then you only paid real estate tax if you owned more than, say, maybe 5 or 10 houses, then there would be a movement towards more people would be buying properties, and I mean, who needs to own thousands of properties? Why? I mean, how many? You don't have that many lifetimes, right? I mean, how greedy can you be?
Yeah, Mads, I love this, because one of the things that I have debated lots is that we shouldn't live in a world where there are billionaires, right? But then you start talking about, well, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? Because we don't want to be communists. We don't want to control. So it's a very, very difficult problem to solve. But it seems to me that some of these actually go a long way in rebalancing the power between the individual and corporations. Now, the final one, I do want to move on because we've got 3 minutes. The final one is make a currency conversion like the one the deeply corrupt Russian government did in 1991 on behalf of the CIA, Howard University, and the banksters on Wall Street. Now, Mads, I really have got no idea what this one is, so please explain it.
So I have less than 3 minutes to explain it real quick. In 1991, they managed, Harvard University and banksters from Wall Street managed to persuade the Russian population, because they had paid 250 billion to the members of the Duma, and they allowed to agree that Russian ruble were worthless. Imagine a country that owned all their flats and houses and factories without debt. It was a blatant lie. It was the richest country in the world in 1991. But then they made a currency conversion and saying your rubles are now worthless. On Monday you come in, you have 5%. You can exchange it on a rate of 5%. So they took the entire savings of the entire Russian population. Now what we could do is we could make a new euro, a new dollar, a new sterling, a new Danish kroner. And then if you have made money on trading weapons, selling vaccines, drugs, child trafficking, or weapons, military, then you cannot convert that money to the new dollar and the new krona. We can do the same to them as they did to law-abiding, good, honest citizens.
You are about to hear
today's news talk and the voice of freedom. We're today's news talk, TNT.